TellyCast, the TV industry news review.
Hi, I'm Justin Crosby. Welcome to another TellyCast. On this week's show, we feature the third panel session from April's TellyCast Content Funding Festival. This panel looks at NFT and blockchain, the opportunities and the pitfalls to consider. It was quite the eye-opener. Thanks to our expert panellists Phil McKenzie from Goldfinch, Umair Masoom from MContent and Lizzie Williams at Harbottle Lewis. It was moderated brilliantly by Creatorville's Sam Barcroft. And the panel was sponsored by MContent. I hope you enjoy the show.
I'm so pleased to be in a room full of NFT and blockchain experts because it's going to make it so much easier to talk to everybody about what is a very highly technical and, frankly, quite specific space. So if there's anybody who doesn't deeply understand NFT and blockchain, if you could put your hand up. We might have to change the script, guys. Sorry about that. Yeah, for people that don't know me, my name's Sam. I run a website called Creatorville, and on there we do something called Content 3, which is just trying to keep up with this amazing space around content. So if you're interested after this session and you want to learn a little bit more about what companies across the content space are doing, I'd suggest, obviously I would, go and have a look at Content 3 on Creatorville. There's a Discord, which is a thing where people talk to each other in these types of communities. You can join that and basically we all chat about stuff in this space. So that's me. Essentially today we're about NFT and blockchain opportunities and pitfalls. So I thought the best thing to kick off with, as there aren't as many experts as I'd hoped, is what the hell is blockchain technology? So I did a bit of research because I can't really explain it myself. And according to IBM, blockchain is a shared, immutable ledger that facilitates the process of recording transactions and tracking assets. So, super sexy stuff. I'm sure that makes absolute sense to everybody. I suppose then the next thing it says on their website is why blockchain is important. Well, blockchain provides immediate, shared, and completely transparent information stored on an immutable ledger. So, apparently, a blockchain network can track orders, payments, accounts, production, and much more. And because members share a single view of the truth, you can see all the details of a transaction end to end, giving you greater confidence, as well as new efficiencies and opportunities. So I'm going to carry on talking for a bit. That's very difficult to understand, but essentially the idea is it's a computer program that people can check on and everybody can see. And so if you're conning someone, everybody knows about it. One of the main use cases of blockchain technology is to provide cryptocurrencies. So people have probably heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum, Dogecoin, and they are purely digital currencies and they're traded on computer exchanges like MetaMask and Coinbase. They use complex math puzzles to ensure security from hackers. Well, they don't really, do they? Very well sometimes. And in recent times, people have started trading their cryptocurrency for media assets called NFTs. One of the main reasons they're trading their cryptocurrency is it's stopped going up at 16,000% a week. And so what's an NFT is in the title of this panel. An NFT is a non-fungible token. And what that is a tradable individual digital asset that exists as code on a blockchain. So NFT issuers, like Phil and Umair, actually, as you'll find out, set specific rules that oversee each collection by writing digital smart contracts into each asset. So there are loads of different types of NFTs. There's restaurant memberships. There are supercars. I was told today about an amazing new bicycle that you can get an NFT for. And essentially, the whole point of NFTs is it gives you an opportunity to directly raise money for your project and then to be really clear about the ownership and the rights and the trading of those rights. So my big tip is to go on OpenSea.io. If you want to have a look at the world of NFTs, it's a one-stop shop. And that is where most of the trading of NFTs happens. It's a bit like eBay for digital assets. And so if you go on there, I think my two tips are go on Coinbase to understand cryptocurrency and go on OpenSea to understand NFTs. If you go to those two websites, pretty quickly you'll see what it is. It's often referred to as Web 3, which is the third generation of the internet. So if Web 1 was the Telegraph online, Web 2 was Facebook, which is kind of interactive. Web 3 is something called decentralized, which is the idea that instead of a few bald white men owning everything, everybody can own a little bit of their own thing. It's massive. I'm going to set a little quiz for Slido, okay? So anybody that's not been on Slido today, you're not doing your job. I want to know how many NFTs exist already, okay? So have a guess. I'm going to give you a tip. It's in the millions, which is already a busy space. So if you can put your guess down, the winner gets a shout out from me. To give you a heads up, OpenSea sold 2.4 billion worth of NFTs in March. So it's not in all time, it was just in March. And that was their third worst month of the last year, I think. So like there's a lot of money going on here. And how's this shaping up for TV? Well, I'm not really sure. So we've got today 3 people that are heavily involved in this area. We're very lucky to have them join us here today. Lizzie Williams in the middle here is a dispute resolution lawyer at Harbottle with a focus on disputes in the technology, media and entertainment sectors. Lizzie has a particular interest in innovative technologies and digital transformation, including disputes involving blockchain technology, for example, NFTs and crypto fraud. Crypto fraud, that's cool. Should start a band called Crypto Fraud. So Lizzie acts for a wide range of clients, from individuals to large corporates, live events companies, music producers, production companies and film financiers, and is a real expert in this space. So thanks for joining us, Lizzie. Umair Masoom, thanks for joining us. Umair, who's come all the way from the UAE to be with us today. He's the founder and CEO of MContent. And MContent are creating a collaborative content ecosystem that self-funds and fuels the creation, trade, consumption, and production of content around the world using the power of blockchain by enabling content creators to connect with potential investors. Umair was previously CMO of Gargash Group, which is a major conglomerate in Dubai, and they are also a key investor in the MContent platform. And finally, Phil McKenzie is not my brother, although he looks like a better looking version of me. He's the COO and co-owner of Goldfinch, which is a UK group of indie entertainment companies spanning finance, production and ventures. Goldfinch have raised and deployed over 200 million in 8 years and have been involved in over 300 productions across film, TV and video games. And recently, Goldfinch launched their crypto NFT crowdfunding platform, which is called FF3. Umair, thanks so much for joining us today. Tell us all about MContent, bearing in mind a lot of people here probably haven't had the chance to visit MContent just yet.
Sure. Firstly, thank you for having me, Sam. So I'll start with what the ecosystem does, because in the introduction, I think what Sam mentioned is that it is the first content funding ecosystem in the world. And why we call ourselves an ecosystem is because we're covering the entire funnel, and we are the first company in the world that is actually delivering the product. And there are lots right now who are talking about doing something similar, but we have actually pulled off the product. How we do it is that we start by funding content creators, and we fund content creators in 2 categories. One is established professionals like yourself, and the others is independent filmmakers who do not have enough opportunities, right? And one of the things while you listen to this interesting and complicated definition of the blockchain, what you need to understand is that the power of blockchain is actually to resolve any gap that exists in the world today, right? And these gaps could be funding gaps, these gaps could be gaps between supply and demand. One of the funny things that we did actually, as he mentioned, was that we recently sold a supercar as an NFT because we had more buyers and we only had a few products to sell. So we decided to mint the supercar as an NFT with distributed ownership and timeshare, right? So similarly, in the content industry, we feel that the biggest problem that exists is centralization, right? And while centralization is good for a few, some of you in the room here are one of the lucky ones, right? But there are many out there who do not get enough opportunities because of the centralization. And by using the power of the blockchain, you're able to actually decentralize and give the power to the viewer, which means that the viewer has an opportunity directly to invest into the content that he watches. And once he becomes the owner of the content, he can actually define where to invest in. that creates more opportunity for more producers, more filmmakers, content, which is the first part of our business model. Till now, we fund ability. So we fund content, which is the first part of our business model. Till now, we funded 20 global projects. We are about to sign up our first Hollywood film. We are about to sign up our first global reality show. And there's a lot of work happening on the funding side. The second thing that we do, which is very prominent, is that we launched the world's first watch to earn platform. So if you can go to the App Store right now or Play Store and go download our app, it's actually the world's first watch to earn platform. And by watch to earn, in simple terms, it means that by watching also you earn, right? So if you go and watch Netflix or YouTube or Amazon, the creator is making money, or the producer is making money, or the platform is making money, right? But the viewer is not making anything. Our belief is that the current model of marketing in this world is slightly flawed, which basically means that you're trying to show your ad to someone who's not interested. He's waiting for the ad to be skipped or for the channel to be switched. Whereas when you make them an owner in this content, all of a sudden they become captive, right? And in order to incentivize them, we have created this watch to earn ecosystem where just by consuming content, you earn in our digital cryptocurrency, which is MContent. MContent right now is traded on more than 7 exchanges. It's ranked at over $100 million.
So just pausing you there, because there's a lot of information quite quickly. So MContent has its own coin,
yes,
which is a cryptocurrency,
yes,
and that lives on a number of exchanges.
Yes, it lives on 2 blockchains.
Yeah.
One is the Ethereum blockchain, and one is the Binance blockchain.
Got it.
And it lives on almost 7 decentralized exchanges, which is different exchanges that you can trade on.
And so if I thought, oh my God, this guy's a genius, I need to get involved, I want to finance some content because I think that loads of people are going to get excited about this and the shows are going to do really well, I'd be able to go onto one of those exchanges, get out my 3 ETH. What's that? 3 ETH is worth about 6 grand, 7, 8 grand.
You can start with 30 as well.
Okay, thanks. And then I'd be able to buy some M coin. Okay, and then you would then deploy that M coin into content. Is that right? Okay.
So how it works is that every time there is a buy or sell on our crypto, there is a 4% tax, which is the CCF tax. CCF stands for Content Creators Fund.
Okay, so 4% of that transaction.
So what you're buying, 4% of what you buy, what you pay for, goes into the fund.
Got it.
Which goes into the funding of content, right?
Brilliant.
So that's how this is a sustainable ecosystem. And also when we make money on these productions, 50% of all the revenue is utilized to buy more of our token from the market and burn it.
Right. Okay.
By burn, I know it's a very technical term, burn, but burn basically means that it evaporates. It's no more, right? So if you reduce the supply of anything, it's basic economics. You reduce the supply of anything, the price goes up, right? So you're buying more of your own cryptocurrency with the profits and the revenues that you're making on the content, and then you're burning it. So essentially, there's no way for this ecosystem to stop because the price will always go up unless the content that you're funding is really bad, which is obviously not the case because we work with people like yourself.
So it's a bit like a share buyback scheme in a public company, is that fair?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, that's what we do. But the other way, which is the scalable way, obviously, Sam can take out the 30 ETH and buy our token and be a part of the ecosystem, but some people cannot buy. So what they can do is go download the app and start watching content and still be a part of the ecosystem because you will earn tokens just by consuming. And I know it sounds really funny, but the Web3 that was launched, and they said that we're actually going to be a company from the Web3 that was launched, and they said that we're actually going to pay gamers to play games. People were like, are these guys crazy? I mean, like, gamers were always used to paying to play, right? In 2 years, there has been so much disruption that now 60% of the gamers globally, they say, I'm only going to play when I earn, right?
So, Umair, I'm going to jump in there. Because I have to say, in the TV world, exactly the same things. In newspapers, it happened. In music, it's happened. And now it's happening in TV. So in newspapers, you used to pay £1 for your newspaper. Then it went down to 10p for your newspaper. And then we got the Metro, which was free, And in television, we used to pay money for our TV. Then we got free television. And in gaming, you used to pay £50 for a console game. Then you didn't pay anything for a console game. And now you're getting paid to play their games. So there is an economic model there across media that does move to being paid for consumption. But Somebody clever in the audience has asked a good question. By the way, the guesses aren't that bad so far, but we haven't had as many as I'd hoped, so keep coming with those. How does MContent earn money from your watch to earn platform? So we understand the benefit that that's given to the users. What benefit does that give to the MContent company and the holders of MContent coin?
Sure. So as I said, the primary model of the revenue coming back to the ecosystem on the platform is advertising. And again, I was an advertiser. We used to lead 27 brands back. The model is flawed, right? So if I'm an advertiser, I was an advertiser. We used to lead 27 brands back in Dubai previously before this role. If someone came to me and said that I will show your ad to an audience member who is really interested in your message because he owns the content, I would pay him a 2x premium. Because right now I'm paying a CPM or, CPRP, whatever model, to show my ad to someone who's not interested, right? And with this model where you're actually making the viewers become owners of content, that's a captive audience, right? Mm-hmm. So essentially, fundamentally, the advertisers should be willing to pay a premium. And that premium should be able to cover the cost of the content platform. It should be able to cover the revenue requirements of the producer and also what we're paying back to the viewer. And that's essentially the model that we work.
Okay. And so I suppose there's a philosophy there of self-interest, isn't there? And kind of viewer self-interest of, look, I've invested in this content. I'm going to enjoy watching it, and I'm going to make sure I watch all the adverts so I get the benefit involved. And you've got quite a viewer-focused philosophy of the whole project, isn't it? That's the kind of basis of this, isn't it? Could you talk a little bit more about kind of how that's different maybe from how things exist at the moment?
Our vision, and again, this vision is not, when I say vision, it doesn't mean I'm going to do it myself. It means all people like us, who believe in the power of the blockchain and Web3. Our vision is to make sure that in the next 3 years, as viewers, whatever we consume in a day, different forms of content, we should have a stake in at least 80% of that content, right? And when I say a stake, it is either co-ownership of that content or it is something coming back to us from the watch to earn ecosystem. So you should be, as a viewer, make something on the content that you consume in the 24-hour cycle, at least 80%.
Can you not tell my teenagers about that? Because I'm not being funny. If they think that they can sit in their pants watching content and get paid for it, I'm not going to get them to be like a grown-up like Lizzie. It's never going to happen, is it?
So one of the reasons why the subscribers, and all of you have read the article about the subscribers for Netflix going down. One of the key reasons is the younger generation. And you know what the younger generation is spending time on, right? It's gaming.
Yeah.
And why they're doing it is because gaming is paying them. They're not doing it for the love of the game manufacturer. They're doing it because gaming now pays them, right? And that's the transition and the transformation that is happening globally, whether we accept it or not. The viewer has realized in the next 2 to 3 years, they will realize that they're the kingmakers. The kingmaker is not Netflix, it's not the studio, it's not Amazon Prime, it is actually the viewer. If the viewer stops watching content, there's no content in the world that could do that.
Well, I think the bosses of Netflix just found that out last week, didn't they? So, and they also found out there were a few million people in Russia as well that they hadn't worked out. That's super helpful, Umair. So I'm going to move across on the back of that, because that sounds like a bit of a horror story for me, the idea that my kids can... Now, talking of horror, Phil, you've launched FF3. That's really interesting. As a very successful business in the film financing space, what led you to kind of put on your big boys pants and launch a whole platform? Because traditionally film financiers are quite a stealthy breed, and work in the shadows, put money into great pieces of very public content that then go off and do well. It feels like quite a bold move to actually launch a platform.
Firstly, thanks for having us on as well. It's a pleasure. Across all the other bits of Goldfinch that we do, it's all about just how can we provide a service and a support to the creator and the person with the idea at the end of the day. And one of those businesses is called First Flight, which is an incubator for second time, mostly filmmakers, but people that will move into TV as well. And we've been kind of kicking ideas around on blockchain for a couple of years because we saw that at its heart, it has all the things that can solve the things you kind of walked through at the start, all the problems within the industry, the transparency, tracking payments, There being a ledger somewhere that you can see who's funded what and where it's coming back from really clearly. But we didn't quite know how to put that into our business and where it kind of sat. And then first flights, we've seen, huge success in the last couple of years. We've got about 10,000 people in a good little community we built there. So we were thinking, well, how can we harness that 10,000 and use some of this technology? And then NFT started to bubble up, and we thought, well, we've already got a community here, which is what, if you read anything about Web3, it's all about community. It's all about how can I tap into a community or create a community and harness that power. So we're like, we've already got this community of 10,000. How do we then harness it and elevate it and take bits of that technology? And one of the ideas we've been kicking around was maybe we move First Flight into like a crowdfunding platform that everyone contributes money, and we run a short film fund every quarter there where everyone puts a submission amount in, and we reallocate that out to the top 3 entries, and Goldfinch tops that up with some extra funds. So we've been running that for a couple of years too. So we're like, we've got the building blocks of this. So that's when we hit upon, why don't we create like the Web3 crypto version of crowdfunding, and center it purely around the creative industry. So that ended up being what is now FF3. So in very simple terms, you as an investor or as a patron, as an audience, as a film lover, content lover, you come onto the platform, you bring your cryptocurrency on, you exchange your cryptocurrency for tokens in that project. So we tokenize the project, we break it down into tokens. Each of those tokens, depending on how many tokens you've bought, gives you access to tiers of rewards. And within those tiers of rewards can be anything you want, but mostly it's NFTs. And within those NFTs is a whole bunch of utility. So it's access to things like the Discord that Sam mentioned, which is a platform a lot of Web3 kind of runs on and communities are built around. It could be access to content before anybody sees it. It can be events. It can be anything, really. That NFT is kind of your token or your pass to get wherever you want in Web3 and increasingly Web2 land.
It's funny you say that, to jump in. Interestingly, one of the best use cases, it seems likely, for Web3 is ticketing.
Yeah.
Because if you've got this kind of digital pass, I don't know if anybody's been fortunate enough to go back out to a big live event in the last 6 months, but often now it's on your wallet, on your phone, right? You don't actually get a paper ticket, and NFTs is a really great, in theory, management tool for ticketing. So it kind of acts the same way if you appropriate it to a piece of content, right?
Yeah, and you can keep going back to it as well. So once that person has that NFT, you can build in all sorts of long-term value and benefits to them as well that can keep giving back and back and back. And that's why when people go, well, isn't this just crowdfunding? You go, well, it is, but it's putting it on steroids and giving investors and patrons something of real meaning and a long-lasting value, rather than just a signed DVD or a trucker cap that is kind of pretty meaningless, really, for the amount that people put into them. And again, kind of going back to why we did this, it is solving a funding problem fundamentally of how do you get that first 20% or that last 20% into your project, which the panel before us discussed fantastically. We see it as, if you can appeal to your audience and the people that love you, in terms of the content you've created or the content you will create or specific characters or whatever it is, get them to put that first 20% and then gives them something meaningful back in terms of a reward for it through the platform. And also separate to that is how much content is out there that isn't finding an audience for, as Umair said, that isn't, in this centralized system we currently have, the buyers aren't commissioning more niche, zeitgeisty, populist things. Well, there's still a market for that. There's still an audience for that. So why not let people build their audience and their community and their project through a platform like ours? And where we're at now is we did our first raise successfully. So that's a tick for us. We've got 3 more projects lined up in the next 3 months, all around short films. And then our view is we're going to open it up to any creator who wants to come on. They can list their project and use the technology to allocate tokens to investors in exchange for NFTs and other rewards that they put in.
That's really exciting, Phil, isn't it? Because I suppose you're finding a whole new way to kind of look after both your community that you've built and potentially your stakeholders within the industry in terms of young filmmakers and everything else.
Yeah. It's all about giving those people access to more funds and that first, particularly through First Flight, that first rung on the ladder of getting content created.
So do we have any broadcasters or commissioners in here? No. Well, it's fucking brilliant, isn't it? We don't have to have any of them here. So all you people are here and you don't have to deal with any commissioners or buyers because actually you don't need them anymore. So if there's one thing that you can take out of this is you don't have to deal with people in big corporations who don't really care about you or your project and just want to get promotion or a pay rise. So
if you can work the current system with this new system, get the best out of both, obviously that's going to be the ideal. Like, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go and pre-sell it, you shouldn't get a commission, but again, it's just that first and last 20%, that equity piece. And also certain properties might be more interesting to put on it. For example, some people may have heard like Stoner Cats, the Ashton Kutcher one.
Yeah, somebody asked that question here. You guys are already successful. We know that. We've talked about that a bit, and it's exciting to be in the room with people that aren't just talking about this, we're actually doing it, which is a rarity I've found. Somebody said, what are the successful examples of NFT in the TV and streaming space? So Stoner Cats is definitely one of those, right?
Yeah, I mean, it helps that Ashton Kutcher was, and his wife were backing it, but that lent itself hugely to the space in terms of it was an animated kind of millennial style animation where they released each of the characters. I believe you might pick me up on errors here, but each of the characters an NFT, you could buy those characters and then your funds that you put in to buy those characters and then use to finance the production of a series of TV series around the Stoner Cats. And once you got that NFT, like we discussed before, that gave you access to not just the episodes, it also gave you other access to events and other benefits on top of that too, didn't it? So
since someone has asked this, so some other interesting use cases for the NFT within our space. So one interesting thing that we did was that we launched a documentary film which became really popular and people wanted to watch the bloopers, right? And we had the bloopers. So we minted the bloopers as NFTs, right? So now only 200 people who bought those NFTs could watch the bloopers. And then there are interesting stuff like exclusive premieres. So we did a premiere, I don't know if you guys saw the news, probably Justin did, that we did a premiere at a beach where we invited 200 people who watched a cinema premiere at a beach because that was built for the Web3. So that access was actually sold through an NFT, which was the ticket to the Cineverse, as we call it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff that can be done.
Because and then you timeshared a supercar last week, didn't you? So this is like a Mercedes.
So Mercedes AMG GT Black Series.
GT Black Series, and you got Supercar Blondie to promote it, and then you sold it in 12 parts. Is that right? So you don't have to sell a film as a single NFT. You can actually sell your next show as 10,000 NFTs and everybody gets 1/10,000th of it. So you can divide it up however you want, right? And explain how the 12 parts works for this car. You've done a time limited.
So basically it's a share in the ownership, right? Why we selected this car is that there were only a few of them in Dubai and we had a waiting list for like 80 people who wanted to buy the car, right? Unfortunately, we had only a few. So you can actually own the car. So these 12 NFTs represent a month in the year, which means Jan, Feb, March, April. We start with June because we just launched recently. So every year in June for 3 years, the guy who bought the June NFT can actually drive the car for a month, show off, do whatever he wants to do. And at the end of the 3-year period, because this is such a rare car that it's actually going to sell on profit because this is going to be a classic. There's no more being produced by the company, right? So it gets sold, and the proceeds that come from the sale of this car are getting distributed in Ethereum to the 12 wallets. So you actually drive the car, and then you also make profit after 3 years.
As long as no one crashes it.
As long as no one crashes it, yeah.
Anyway, once you get your head around the fundamentals of it, and I totally appreciate it takes a while because it is a little complex, you can apply it to anything, whether it's a car, content, a piece of art, a restaurant experience, anything. using tokens, crypto, and NFTs, which are kind of all the same thing anyway, to raise funds for it and then give out a share.
Anything that has more buyers than sellers, you can apply this.
Okay, that's a great fundamental, because I think a lot of us, me, isn't quite sure what's right for an NFT and what's not right for an NFT. I think the things I've picked up recently are, that's a brilliant insight, you need more buyers than sellers. The other brilliant insight is about community. Don't do an NFT and then try and create an audience. It's never going to work in a million years. So what you have to do is have something that's already got an audience and then sell them an NFT. So it's the same principle, actually, in fact. So that is really good. Phil, I saw a shout out on your website for document or project around crypto.
Yes.
Tell us about why that is.
Yes, well spotted. We basically looking for the next probably 3 to 6 months more projects to raise for that lean into the space a bit, so we as a business can just build our community more and more, especially around those people that are crypto natives, already in Web3, already have their cryptocurrency sat there in their wallets. That's been our biggest learning, is appeal to those guys, because they're the quickest and simplest to move into the projects that we're raising for.
You don't have to talk them through how to open a MetaMask wallet.
On our first raise, we spent so long trying to get, we had so many tutorial videos, and we spent days and days and days putting together all the educational stuff to walk everyone through the still like 5 steps to do it. And what we should have been doing was just spending the time to focus on the crypto community to get those guys in at this stage. The newbies coming in will take time, and it'll happen, and the tech will get better to facilitate that quicker. But back to your point around the projects, we want to build our community of investors. So when anybody in the audience wants to come to the platform with a project, we have a sort of, a critical mass of investors.
A big fat wallet. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Lizzie, apologies. It's taken a while to get to you. So we've met 2 brilliant evangelists. Now we're going to meet the grown up. Okay. Because I'm not being funny, but this is an absolute clusterfuck, this world, right? Just to be really scientific about it. This world is a world where you can build these amazing things, make a lot of money, and then someone can literally steal $600 million off you with one keystroke, which had happened a couple of weeks ago. So this is absolute Wild West territory, which means if you are in the Wild West, you need a sheriff. Lizzie is a sheriff. Lizzie, can you tell us about what you do at Harbottle Lewis in this space, please?
Yeah, sure. So there's 2 main aspects, really. So one aspect is preemptive. So people come to us with a project. One of these guys, or girls, with a project, with an idea, and they think, how do I make this work? I'm really scared of doing it wrong. I'm really scared of getting into trouble. What do I need to do? Do I need to set up a company? How do I get these IP rights, make sure I've got all of the rights I need to distribute the content I want to distribute? How do I make sure that when I sell these NFTs onto consumers that they get all of the rights that they think they're getting in them, and that I'm not giving away more than I want to? Mm-hmm. So it's the rights in, it's the rights out, and also the regulatory aspects. So sometimes if you've got something that's classed as a security token, if there's a profit share element, things like that, you may be subject to regulatory rules. So you may need local law advice from the US or the UK to make sure that you're compliant. So it's basically taking a step back and thinking, this is all very exciting, there are amazing opportunities, but when we break this down, just because we are on the blockchain doesn't mean we're immune to everything that we normally would need to deal with when we're just distributing content, creating content. There are still IP rights, there are still rights to be protected, you still need to make sure you're contractually protected, there's limitations of liability, you're not going to find yourself in a complete mess. So the first half is the preemptive work we do to reduce people's risk when embarking on this kind of project. That can mean sitting in a room with coders and lawyers together, trying to work on a smart contract together in collaboration. You've got the benefits of smart contracts, which is basically self-executing code and can mean that you can get royalties right down the chain if you're the seller. But you've also got the fact that often if a coder drafts a contract, it will miss out loads of things that lawyers want to put in it. There is a way of working together and doing it as a hybrid.
Could we do a quick kind of pretend example? So pretend I'm famous and I decide to do an NFT of my Pride trainers. And I'm going to do 10 tokens. And I say, Lizzie, I'm famous. I've got 10 million Twitter followers. I'm going to do an NFT of my trainers. Lizzie obviously can't talk about any of her own clients. So if we do a hypothetical, how does that sound? You said smart contracts are in the code itself enable you to set the rules. That's right, is it? And so if I said, okay, I want to sell my trainers, I throw that over to you. You've got to think about English law, and you've got to think about the way the internet works. Is that tricky?
It is tricky. I mean, one of the easiest ways of doing it is to make sure you've got a governing law and jurisdiction clause in there, and then you know which law will be governing your contract. Because if you don't put that in, then, you know, depending on which court it comes before, you just don't know how they're going to interpret it and what they're going to do with it. But that's precisely why you need to think about these things at the beginning. Early
doors, because we saw Quentin Tarantino getting into some bother by trying to sell NFT rights, and a lot of legacy content, I would imagine, doesn't have NFT rights in the contract. Is that fair? Yeah, absolutely. So the Quentin Tarantino case, he was trying to distribute some NFTs to do with Pulp Fiction. So there was this contract from the 90s, which the lawyers were all poring over, obviously drafted way before NFTs were anything anyone was thinking about. And it all came down, or was going to come down, when the court hears it, into the precise words of this clause to do with distribution of rights in the script and things like that. So it is a case of doing due diligence if you're working with content that was created before anyone thought about these things. So obviously the considerations are different if you're working with pre-existing content, pre-blockchain content versus stuff you're creating now. I always thought it was nonsense when I was signing American contracts that talked about rights being in this city, state, country, world, universe. Now I can see they just didn't put the metaverse on there, did they? They weren't that fucking clever. But the other side of your work in this area, I'd imagine, is sorting out terrible messes, is it? Yeah, that's the second part. So, okay. And there's people that come to you that have already made the mess. And then they have received letters complaining about IP. They may have had their NFTs taken down off OpenSea. They've got a big PR problem. They've got lots of unhappy customers, and that's because they didn't do the due diligence. They haven't got their IP contracts in place, and then they're exposed basically to things going wrong. So you've got to basically treat it like any other business or project and not forget about that traditional stuff. Unfortunately, you can't ignore it. So yes. There's two real aspects to what goes wrong. It's either the IP rights mainly, getting those rights, and it's also consumers not really understanding what they're buying. We talk a lot about owning an NFT, owning content, which is how it feels, but you're not really generally own. Sometimes you're owning content, but it depends what the contract says. Sometimes you're really buying a license to view something for your personal use. I think iTunes was like that when people used it, wasn't it? Well, back when people paid to download DTO, actually the license was always just a license to watch it in perpetuity for as long as Apple wanted you to be able to watch it. So you pay money, it feels like ownership, and that is what connects you with your audience. And that's great marketing spiel, but you need to be careful you're not pretending you're giving someone something that they're not. They haven't got the copyright. They don't actually own the content in all ways. They own a very enjoyable right to view it, generally. So again, it's just making sure that they understand what they're buying and that works for them and that works for you, and you're not giving them something you don't own and you're not able to distribute. And so, Umair, you kind of had to think about this with MContent and M Originals, didn't you? And you kind of decided to work it slightly differently and set it up so that you contracted with the producers separately from the smart contracts. Can you explain your thinking behind that?
So I think some of the points that Lizzie has raised are really the reality of our space. And while there's all the fancy stuff out there, there's also the fact that she's right that most of the organizations that are entering this space, and even some of the celebrities that are trying to ride on the NFT wave, they're not really working on the fundamentals and they're not structuring themselves right, and which is leading to all of these problems. So we, on the other side, obviously, we have like a huge law team. The company that has helped us build the Cineverse, which is our cinema for the Web3, is a global consulting firm, and their law wing is actually working with us for the past few months. We've already confirmed the fact from leading lawyers that we are a utility token, in fact, and we're not a security, and the jurisdiction applies to multiple regions.
And you contract directly with producers separately to the coin as well, don't you? So
yes, we do. So there is an option for the producer, because there are some producers who already believe in the ecosystem and they would accept payments in the cryptocurrency. So then the production payment is going to them directly from the blockchain, which could be recorded on the blockchain. But if there is a producer, one of you, who feels like you want to be a part of the project, you want to do something for our community, but at the same time, you're not comfortable working on the blockchain. So we also have fiat options for paying producers. And then we have a way of tying it all back in, because as I said, the fundamental model that we have is that there's 50% of all revenues that are being made, they're coming back into the ecosystem and the community can track it, right? Because when we buy tokens, those are transactions on the blockchain. When we burn them, those are transactions on the blockchain. We've already burned 40% of our supply. That is something that can be verified by the blockchain. So our community is happy. It's something that is growing. In our case, because our reliance on NFTs is minimal, so most of the issues that Lizzie has mentioned do not apply on us, because ours is more of a democratic process, because we fund content through the CCF.
Yeah.
And we're not getting into individual smart contracts for every project that is being funded.
Right,
So
which is very different.
It's easier for us, from a legal perspective. It's better to manage, and I think we feel that it is more scalable than the model that most of the other companies are taking, which is through the NFT route.
And it's very interesting, isn't it, that a lot of established big studios, especially in the US, are working very hard to fit NFTs, bolt-ons, a bit like they did with social media in TV 10 years ago, where they're trying to add it on rather than make it a fundamental part of their offer, which must be quite difficult on a retroactive rights basis to clear all of that stuff. But it does make it much easier to start with a clean sheet of paper with new projects. I think there's also another project that I wanted to mention, which was about Vitalik, who was one of the founders of Ethereum, which raised $3 million pretty much overnight, just because they had access to Vitalik, and he's a hero in the crypto space. So I think there are now multiple projects worth. Stoner Cats raised 30 million in a day. So, is significant amounts of money that can be leveraged through existing communities. It seems to be the way it works really well at the moment. My personal view on this is that actually probably the most useful for rights management in the end. And so the next Sage or a big Oracle database will probably actually be a blockchain application, and that's where probably the mass utility will come out of it. But I feel like some of these questions are a bit better than me talking about that. So what makes crowdfunding through NFTs superior to something like Kickstarter, guys, which also offers patrons rewards? It sounds significantly more complicated in the new Web3 space than it would be to jump on Indiegogo and raise money there. Can I take that back to you, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, for a user coming on, it won't be any more complicated. It'll be the same user experience, very simple to do, and we've worked really hard to get it as simple as possible for an investor coming on, a patron coming on and putting money in. And equally on the flip side of that, for a producer coming on and wanting to list their project, it'll be super simple as well. And in terms of why it's more valuable, I mean, this is up for discussion on a very kind of, high level, but, the rewards that you're granting to the people that are handing over the crypto and the money for you to make your project, the rewards you're giving them are all built on the blockchain. So they're all verifiable and they're all an asset, technically at the end of the day. So kind of, as I said before, rather than sending out 1,000 baseball caps to everyone that gave you $100, you're giving them a NFT, which is verified on the blockchain, is an asset and can go up and down in value, depending on how the project lands and how much hype is built around it and how much the community gets behind it.
And so MContent coin, you can look at how much it's worth at any time of the night or day, and you can trade in and out of it. So, I think that's where a lot of the momentum for these projects comes from, is investors who clearly looking for a short or long-term reward on that initial investment.
Yeah. And the other valuable bit is that transparency of you're putting your money in and can I see it coming back, which goes back to the points around blockchain technology and the ledger and visibility and transparency. And that's the most important thing. And one of the reasons that we moved into this space was trying to understand that from a finance point of view. How do we make that process better and at scale, which we're trying to get to? And the final point, just kind of looping back on Lizzie for the legal side, is for us, by the time we get to the end of summer, I hope we'll have cracked the kind of how do we put an FCA wrapper around everything we do, so you will actually get a share of those, an investor coming on will get a share of those profits coming back, or a share of the underlying IP, in keeping with how many tokens of the project you hold.
That's a really difficult process, isn't it? The FCA actually give you a person, don't they, to try and help you to succeed to get through that vetting because it's so shit.
Yeah, we've done it on. We've been involved in a couple of retail platforms for raising investment from the general public. So we've been through the process twice, and so I don't know quite why we're doing it a third time. But that is going to be, I feel, will be a huge USP for us over everyone else in the space doing it, and back to the point, it gives something of real value, and just gives you an amazing relationship between the investor and the creator, that you actually have a indisputable share of that project, whether it's revenue or IP, that will recoup, should the project recoup, for eternity going forward.
Well, that's the big dream, isn't it? I mean, when I looked at this space 6 months ago, you do get excited about the idea that if you raise £1 million to do your rip-off of Top Gear, you can race around some cars for a while, spend maybe 600 grand, pocket the rest, and then everybody that's put loads of money into it can, when it kind of eventually earns loads of money back by being exploited in lots of different ways, everybody gets richer. That's the kind of bigger thought behind this, I think, which is getting people excited at the moment, as well as not having to talk to commissioners.
Sorry to just add on the Kickstarter question, because I think that's very relevant, especially in my case, because when I started this company around a year ago, we first went for our seed round. I pitched the project to so many investors. One of the key questions that I would always have is actually, so what you're trying to do, essentially, you're trying to create a crowdfunding platform for content. So why don't you do the Kickstarter for content? Why do you want to go into blockchain and crypto? And what I used to tell them, and now I think when I look back, I was right. Now we're about to enter our Series A of funding, hopefully, with the big raise that's happening in June. Things are going really well. But when I look back, the answer that I used to give is actually right, because I used to tell them that with the blockchain and crypto, and which our friend also said, you're actually able to create stakeholders of success, because you have your entire community, all the producers, all the celebrities who are part of the content that you're creating, all of them are becoming your stakeholders of success, right? And the biggest example I will give you right now is that I'm running a business out of UAE right now, right? On our platform right now, we have daily average users 40,000 per day. We haven't even started real marketing. Out of those 40,000 users, majority are sitting in the US, right? Now, if I had gone for a Kickstarter model, doing the same thing, essentially, my focus would have been on the Middle East, because I'm based there, right? Most of my retail investors would have been from the Middle East.
Is that because in the US there's a real massive rush towards Web3 innovation, and that's where the active early seed investors are? Also
because the content that we funded till now, it's mostly US, South America. So you'll see that split. And as I said, you're creating stakeholders of success, which means that if I've hired a producer to do a film on Ripple versus SEC, which became really popular, that's in US, right? So all the people who featured, the producers, the celebrities, all of them are promoting the project themselves. I don't have to ask them to promote the project, because they feel like co-owners.
Well, because they actually do own part of the project. So,
exactly.
Great.
So that essence of a community is actually what differentiates us from a Kickstarter model, and that's the reason for the fast-paced growth that we have.
I'm going to ask Lizzie for some tips and final thoughts in a minute, but what I wanted to say on the back of that was, isn't it fascinating that this is a micro generation coming up who have grown up with Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and what's his name, Bezos, who does the shopping stuff, and basically they've grown up with that. And they don't like it very much. And because they feel like their data is just being sold the whole time. They're just victims at the end of a chain of misery. And that essentially these people are so rich that they, instead of letting their employees unionize, they just do rocket ships to Mars. And basically they're fed up with it. And so they do want to feel that they have equity and control and a little bit of a stake in these things. And so it's not just the technology of this that is of interest to that community. It's the involvement on a tangible, well, still an intangible asset, I suppose, but to them, digital life is more important than analog life a lot of the time. So, a digital asset has more value than a physical asset. And therefore, if they own a little bit of the next Star Wars movie, to them, that's mega and so important. And so I think that's where a lot of people will miss this. people like me, middle-aged, will just miss it because they'll be like, well, who cares? You know, I've got my Amazon Prime. If something good comes on, I'll watch it. You know, they won't understand that feeling of a little bit of power that people get when they buy something. What I wanted to come on to was, Lizzie, I'd kind of asked you for some suggestions about how people can just take those first steps to getting this right, rather than having the terrible pitfalls of Jay-Z trying to stop people from selling the rights to his songs and all the rest of it. You know, so have you got some initial thoughts for people about what they should do to kind of set themselves up for success in this space?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to have a bit of a checklist we send to people at the beginning when they're thinking about this kind of project. And it will be how you, which entity you want to be responsible for this project. Where do you incorporate that entity? Think about tax, think about all those various impacts that might have.
Would the idea be, don't put it in your actual company?
Don't put it necessarily in your own name and have unlimited personal liability.
Right, yeah.
Think about rights in, IP rights, everything you need to be entitled to give away, what you want to give away. Think about what you're distributing, the rights you want to give away and what you don't want to. So it's rights in, rights out, and obviously always having an eye on regulation, because that is changing rapidly. It may become more extensive, and you need to make sure you don't fall in any traps in terms of security tokens and that kind of thing.
Because there is a massive problem with a lack of regulation in this space that is clearly going to come rushing in at some point, and in many different countries will look very different from each other. And we know the Bank of England, we know the government of the UK have decided that our economy is so broken that we have to completely rush into cryptocurrency now as quickly as we can. So we're going to see a lot of regulation, I would imagine, with the Bank of England in trying to become the home of crypto in the UK. That's very difficult, isn't it? Because if you set up a big project today, because these projects tend to have a length of time, you don't know what's going to happen in a year's time when the regulation comes in. So are you having to write massively open-ended contracts at the moment to try and allow the space for this?
Yeah, and I think the trend generally is towards transparency. So that is why everything has to be done pretty much to the letter to reduce your exposure. The trouble is, at the beginning, a lot of projects don't have the funding to necessarily get lawyers involved to do all this to the nth degree. That's the trouble we're finding, is that, you know, the startups who want to do this stuff are precisely the people that can't afford to get the stuff in place.
Do it properly.
But obviously the risk is that then, individuals end up getting personally involved in messes, basically. And that's kind of the issue, is that it's making sure that the funding can allow for everybody to do these things properly, so that we can make sure that the NFTs and the space has a good reputation and these projects continue to be successful, rather than consumers constantly being frustrated that they're not getting what they thought, or, you know, things are being hacked or taken, or etc. So that's the challenge, I think, is getting the funding to set things up properly at the right stage in the process.
So you need to get yourself properly dressed before you go to the party. This is where we are. Yeah. Okay, good. So thank you, Lizzie, for that. That's really helpful advice. So a couple of quick fire questions. The environment. Apparently everybody thinks in the audience it's terrible for the environment. What are we doing about that, guys?
I mean, there's been a lot of press around this, but it depends what chain you're on. For example, we're built on Polygon, which sits on top of Ethereum. The carbon footprint of that is absolutely tiny. I think every time you want to change some crypto in that, it's like the same electricity as putting the kettle on or putting the toaster on, actually. So it's very...
because it's a proof of stake rather than proof of work.
So there's been, and the whole of Ethereum's moving over as well very shortly. I can't remember the exact timeline. So it's been a big...
That's a more tricky question, I think. Yeah.
So there's been a lot of changes in the space, and whenever anybody says, like, well, what about this and what about this problem? My response is kind of always the same. Is like, there's some of the brightest, most driven people in the world, like working literally 24/7 on Web3 at the moment. And so if there's a problem, they knew about it like years ago, and they're already working through multiple solutions. So
I have to agree with that. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen more clever people in the same space ever. And I was in Web 1 and Web 2. And so, and they're much cleverer, and they're all working together, and they're all sharing it all at the same time with each other as well, which is pretty amazing. So I'm going to end because we have to wrap up. Thank you very much for the questions. The guesses are pretty much all over the place. I'm a bit disappointed with you all. The closest is 200 million. There are 250 million NFTs already out there. So if everybody says we're early, well, we might be early, but I'm feeling kind of late on the back of 200 million pieces of content out there already. Umair, can you tell us the types of content quickly that you're most looking for M Originals from producers? Because I think we just need to get on the specifics before I'm kicked off the stage.
Sure, yeah. So we're funding all categories of content. We've been doing scripted, unscripted. We've done a lot of unscripted, actually. And again, the reason why we've done a lot of unscripted is because blockchain mass adoption is one of our topics of interest. So we've been doing a lot of stuff about, let's say, Binance, Ripple, about the metaverse, about NFTs, and most of that falls into the unscripted category. But now we are going serious into scripted. As I said, we're about to sign our first Hollywood film. So what interests us is basically any piece of content that connects with our audience, and our audience is the early adopters. And the early adopters are the people that you don't understand. So if there is a producer who feels that they can actually get out of their comfort zone and understand these people who want to have the power themselves rather than give the power to someone else, and there is a piece of content that you feel can connect with it, just come to us, and we are looking for smart ideas and smart products, and we will fund them as M Original. One thing you will need to be ready for is, which again is the cultural and the major shift, is that you have to be able to let go of your IPs, because the IPs will be owned by our token holders and not by you. So if you're up for that, we will be the window. Okay. But that's the major shift that you have to accept.
Great. Thank you for making that so clear. Phil, I'm just going to ask you a question that I asked quite a bit at the beginning. All right, this is brilliant. Buy coins, make shows. Where do you watch it? It's not on BBC One.
It's a good question. And this is where I think you still need to have your foot in like normal modern day entertainment sector too, or that's what we tell everyone we meet in Web3 is like this ecosystem and structure and these new platforms like MContent that are emerging are going to take time, and Umair's like right at the cutting edge of it. And so you still need to understand how can you distribute and sell your content in the current marketplace, the normal marketplace too. So
Umair, we can watch it on the MContent app for your content. Where would we watch your horror film that you've just commissioned this way?
We're currently working out options. So I think we're going to do a online premiere using some of like the interesting like crypto Web3 platforms out there, and then we'll take it down a more traditional release route as well. Maybe put it into some cinemas, do an IRL event somewhere for premiere, and then do the usual sales internationally on it as well. Right,
okay, through the film kind of distribution world. Interesting. Okay, so for distributors, there might be a great option to start picking up the rights of crypto-funded projects as well as another stream of content. Lizzie, thank you so much for being the grown-up. Very helpful to have somebody just remind us that law still exists everywhere, even if we're playing in the metaverse. Umair, thank you so much for coming over from Dubai to be with us today. And Phil, thank you very much for all your insights. I'm very lucky to have people that actually do know what they're talking about on the panel today. So please, could you give them all a big hand?
Well, that's about it for this week's show. I hope you enjoyed the panel. TellyCast was edited by Ian Chambers and recorded at Lincoln's Inn in London on the 26th of April. Next week's show features the final panel from the event on co-production. And after that, in the coming weeks, we'll be previewing some of the other key content industry events happening in June, and I'll be travelling to Dubrovnik, La Rochelle, Annecy and Cannes to bring you special shows from NEM, Sunnyside of the Dock, MIFA and Cannes Lines. Until then, stay safe.